Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tales of the Pod podcast. My name is Michaela, I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host Nick. How's it going, guys?
And this week we're going to be talking about foreign horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will say, you love foreign horror movies.
I do like foreign horror movies.
It's one of your favorite, themes or things to watch, I'd say.
Yeah. I definitely enjoy watching a good foreign horror film.
You have more patience for them than I do, I will say.
I don't know, some of the best, horror movies are foreign, in my opinion. I mean, there's just so many of them out there that are foreign that are really, really good.
Yeah. And we kind of open up our horizons on this to more, UK, Australian movies as well.
Yeah.
Not just typically... I know some are Argentinian or Korean or whatever, but we did kind of open up to all different countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basically our, premise for these movies is anything not made in the U.S., essentially. Even if they speak English or whatever in the movie, if it's made in Australia, that's still, meets our criteria of not being made in the U.S.
Which I think a lot of people, myself included, have a hard time with subtitles. Because, I know if it's, a really high action or, balls-to-the-wall movie, I'm watching the movie and I'm not paying attention to the subtitles.
Right.
And then a lot of times when they dub over things, I think it was, Squid Games or something where I saw it was dubbed over in English, and I'm like, that's definitely not what they're saying. It's not matching at all.
Yeah, it's not how it would be, when they dub something over, it's not a direct translation, how subtitles would be more direct,
Right, and I'm given the context, that's not what they're saying.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's the big argument with, anime and stuff like that, is subbed or dubbed anime, and I personally, with anime, I like watching dubbed because I just love Dragon Ball Z, and I've always seen it dubbed. But most people do like subbed anime because it's actually more direct translation than it would be as dubbed.
And it's hard too watching something and people's lips aren't lining up with what they're saying.
Right. Yeah, no, you don't like that at all.
That bothers me. So I will say a lot of the movies I picked are UK, Australia.
Sure.
Things like that. I do like some Korean horror, which we touched on a couple weeks ago in my zombie episode.
Right.
But for the most part, I mostly picked more English-speaking countries.
No, there's a few in here that I believe I have is English. And my number one's actually Australian or New Zealand, so.
Which I should open up my horizons more, because I know there are good. Right. I know there are good movies out there.
No, yeah, there definitely, there's quite a bit out there.
And you miss out on them when you're,
Yeah, if you, have a problem with, following along with
I don't even like accents, so, even the Australian ones, I'm I don't know.
Yeah, you don't.
When they're R and R.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't take it seriously.
That's funny. All right, we're going to do our top 10, I guess, favorite foreign horror films.
What were we trying to say yesterday?
Oh, I don't even
Fatality or something?
Rivalry.
Rivalry.
Yeah, and I can't say that word. I just found out. So we're going to do our top 10. And this is obviously going to be subject to change because there's a lot of, at least for me, there's a lot of, I could make it look top 100 favorite foreign horror.
And we always try to pick, I don't know if you guys have caught on, we always try to pick movies we haven't talked about before.
Yes, that's what we try to do.
So while this might not be my exact top 10 list, my exact top 10 of movies that we haven't discussed.
Yes,
we try to give something new every week.
Well, that's what we try to do, yeah. To kind of help you guys broaden your horizons, and that's why you're watching this, is to broaden your...
Because there are a lot of movies out there.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah, there's so many. So I guess I'll start with my number 10. I picked 1960s Black Sunday, and this is an Italian Gothic horror film directed by the one and only Mario Bava. And this kind of officially was his directorial debut. It stars Barbara Steele, who's an Italian scream queen. Mm-hmm. She's been in a lot of his movies, and some other ones as well. But basically, this film starts out, opening scene, and it's cool because it's in black and white, so it's kind of got that creepy old school vibe. But it starts out in black and white in this, I think it's a made up town, or maybe it's current day Moldova. But this witch is being basically prepared to be burned at the stake, and she's got this death mask on, and it's got spikes on it, and they're pounding this mask onto her face essentially, and that obviously kills her right from the start. Yeah. But obviously it's filmed, so she's not dead, and she basically puts a curse on the land and everything. So then we flash forward about 200 years, into the future, so it would be like in the 1830s at some time, and these two doctors are on their way to a small town in Moldavia is actually Moldavia. Moldavia is the actual town. They're going to a medical conference there, and their carriage gets a broken wheel, so they're waiting for the coachman to fix it. So they're wandering off through the countryside, and they come upon this crypt, and they discover the witch's body, and the witch's name is Asa, and she's like a vampire type of witch. So they're like, they're going through this tomb, and they see that her death mask is like preserved through like this pane of glass, and they break the glass trying to swat this bat that like came in and like was disturbing them, and they take the mask and they remove the mask from her face, and they realize like it's a corpse underneath the mask and everything. So he ends up getting cut, one of the doctors, in his on the piece of broken glass, and his blood drips onto Asa's body, and that kind of sparks her coming back to life. So they get out of the tomb, and they oh
shit, our camera fell. Keep going, sorry.
So they get out of the tomb, and that's funny.
Sorry.
Okay, that's funny. So they return to the carriage, and there's actually a young girl named Katya, who's basically the reincarnation of Asa, 200 years later. So it's Barbara Steele plays the witch, and she also plays this girl, Katya. So, you obviously don't see them at camera at the same time, but it's the same person playing, two different characters. So she's basically the reincarnation. So they kind of... they meet with her and everything. She brings her back into like this castle that she's like kind of like a baroness of and everything. And meanwhile, the corpse of Asa is like coming to life, and she ends up like gaining enough life force to come alive from the crypt and everything, crawl out of the crypt, and then she kills this guy. That's like wandering. I think he's like a farmer or something like that. That's kind of like just wandering around the crypt area. And so now she's got more life force. So she makes her way to town looking for Katya, because there's some sort of like psychic connection or whatever. And like Katya also too feels this now that like the witch is alive. Like she's like kind of like in this weird stupor almost. Okay. And essentially, so the witch kind of goes and the townspeople are starting to see her, and they see Katya, which they've known Katya, obviously, like they've seen her, and they know that she's not the witch, but now they're seeing like her in two different places. Essentially, it's kind of hard to explain because, there's the witch, Asa, who's played by the same person. So there's
like her doppelganger.
Yeah, essentially they're seeing her doppelganger, and they're like, "Oh no, the witch has risen. The witch is the vampire witch has risen."
You're different when we see you as Asa.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. So essentially, they start getting all panicky and everything, and they're like, these two doctors like, "No, that's not possible," because they're doctors. They think they know everything, and
of course, casually.
So ultimately what ends up happening at the end of the movie is Katya is attacked by Asa to fully like reincarnate Asa or bring her to life. And then she was going to masquerade as Katya after, so she kills Katya to live on and everything like that. And the guy that she actually killed in the field becomes her like slave. Like he's somehow like necromanced back to life too. I forget how. And like he's like her slave now, so he's like kind of doing her bidding and stuff for her. And ultimately what happens is, so Asa and Katya, they're having like a show off basically, and the townspeople show up like with an angry mob and everything. They get a hold of, they kind of have to pick between, who's who, and they pick Asa. They pick the right one because Katya has a crucifix on her chest, and that's what tells the difference, because the crucifix would not be on her because she's
burn her,
yeah, exactly. She's a vampire. So that essentially they catch Asa and they burn her again, burn her to death and everything, and then Katya kind of snaps back into normal, and they kind of just live happily ever after.
I don't know why the camera keeps falling.
Yeah, so it's a good movie. Definitely a good watch. It's just like gothic horror sense,
So do we like Asa in this movie? Is she like a good villain, or we don't like her?
No, she's not good. No,
not good.
No, okay. Katya's the one that she's like the baroness that's like kind of just naive a little bit.
The helpless victim kind of thing.
Yeah, not really like a damsel in distress, but kind of like that as well. But yeah, it's definitely a good watch. I mean, it marks Mario Bava's directorial debut. So, I mean, and then he's done other, I have another one on here that you guys probably already guessed, but...
They redo it in color recently?
I think they didn't, like, remake it. I think they just colorized it. You know, It's not like a remake of a movie. I think they just colorized it.
I gotcha.
But yeah, it's a very good film. And it definitely one of my favorites for sure. So that's 1960s Black Sunday.
Yeah, it's a very popular movie. I've definitely heard a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, it's basically like one of the foundations of horror. Yeah. Like Shudder has it on like one of their horror 101s.
Yeah, they're like little title things they have.
Yeah, they have like horror 101, foundations of horror, and Black Sunday is always on there because it really is a foundation of horror. I mean, 1960, and there's good parts of the movie too. I can't like spend the whole episode talking about it, but like Asa reveals to I think one of the doctors that she's not really Katya, and like she pulls open her gown and she's like a skeleton. But her head's like still like a normal person's head. She's like a skeleton, corpsey body. So there's like some pretty cool like jump scares. And Mario Bava was like kind of known for like his creepiness and stuff like that in his earlier films.
Yeah, I was gonna say I looked up some pictures online. I saw pictures of her with like the holes in her face from where they took the mask.
Yeah, where they took the mask.
Her.
Yes, exactly.
Just so creepy. So she was actually a witch. She wasn't like wrongfully accused.
No, she really was a witch. Okay. Yeah, she wasn't.
Because that's very common as well.
Yeah. Yeah, she was
You're a woman, you're a witch.
Well, I don't think it actually ever really says, but she's like on revenge, so you think, and she was like risen from the grave by blood, so probably a witch, They don't ever directly say if she was like wrongfully accused or not, but we'd like to think she wasn't.
Alright, so for my number 10, I picked, I believe this is a UK film, or is it Australian? Hold on.
I think Babadook was Australian or New Zealand or something like that.
Okay, so I picked The Babadook, and I thought it was British for some reason, but I guess it's Australian.
Yeah. Well, that's technically, England owned Australia forever, so that's why they all kind of talk the same.
I was going to say, I swore they had British accents.
They do. Well, it's Australian, but it's the same...
Well, Australian's a little more like Arnar.
Well, yeah, but that's just, that's essentially the same accent.
Anyways, so I think I've talked about The Babadook a little bit before, maybe briefly. Yeah. But this movie used to be on Netflix back in the good old days. And it's like out of pocket, it's crazy, it's all that, but it's definitely like I don't know what the right word is, not synonym, but like a metaphor, I guess, for grief is like what the whole movie is about.
Yeah, there's like an underlying meaning.
There's actually a meaning to it. Like it seems crazy and out of pocket, but there's actually a meaning to it. There is a mom and dad, well, soon to be mom and dad, Amelia and Oscar, and they're on their way to the hospital, and the dad gets killed in a car accident. But the mom lives through, and then they give birth to their son, and his name is Samuel. So the mom already kind of resents the son, like subconsciously.
Yeah, like how come you lived and he didn't kind of thing.
Like we live trying to save you, which is a terrible thing, but it probably does happen.
Right.
And she's reading him a story one night, and he's like, oh, I found this book, and she's like, where the hell did this come from? And the storybook is The Babadook, and it's literally just like, look up a picture of him, he's the creepiest little thing. He's got these long black fingers, and he's just a black figure with a black hat on.
Yeah, he's like a shadow.
Yeah. And it's a pop-up book, and they're reading it, and they're like, oh, Mr. Babadook does this, Mr. Babadook does that. And after that, essentially, like, strange events start to occur, and the Babadook gets, like, closer and closer and starts to try to possess the mom in order to, like, kill the son.
Yes, yeah.
And, it goes balls to the wall. Like, there's some really, like, comical parts. Like, remember which... I don't know if you've seen it.
Babadook?
Oh, Babadook, where she screams at the son in the backseat. She's like, why can't you be normal?
Yeah, he's just like, ah! He's just like, he goes even more crazy. Yeah.
But at the end, they end up kind of defeating the Babadook. She, like, chases him down to the basement, like, slams the door shut. But then at the end, you can see she's carrying, like, down a thing of dog food to the basement, so she's still keeping the Babadook and, like, feeding it, keeping it hostage.
Right.
But it's definitely a metaphor for grief, I think, is what the monster of the Babadook is. It's always there, it's always lingering in the shadows. If you don't deal with it, it's always there.
Yeah, confronting your grief.
Right. Yeah. It's always ready to, ruin your life, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
But it's a good movie. It's definitely a unique concept, and it's got a scary looking monster. It's got a creepy kid, like everything you could ask for in a horror movie.
Right.
And, my absolute favorite part about this movie is that when it was on Netflix, Netflix accidentally listed it under its LGBTQ plus movies. So now the Babadook is a gay icon. And if you go to Pride festivals, people will have the Babadook and he's like decked out in rainbow.
Right,
yeah. Like somebody messed up at Netflix and listed him as a gay icon and now he just is.
That's funny.
And that's my favorite part of this whole movie.
I know, that's really funny.
But it's worth a watch. It's a female director. I mean, it's definitely worth a watch.
I know, she's a great director too. Actually, her other movie, one of her other movies is my number one on my list.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
yeah,
So she definitely
she embraced it too when they put him as a gay icon. She embraced it. She's like, okay, yeah, let's keep going.
Hell yeah.
So that's one of my favorite parts of this movie. Is it could be so. I didn't find it that scary, but it can be very scary to others.
It's creepy. Like it's got like a creepy atmosphere from what I remember. I haven't seen it since it like came out. But
I saw it when it first came out. It's stop motion too, and stop motion freaks me out for some reason.
Oh yeah, stop motion is creepy.
It's very eerie.
Like Mad God, like that was just very bizarre.
It's very eerie.
Like so rigid, and then like the movements are very rigidy. And
but I would say it's definitely like a cult classic and like a
definitely
an internet movie
for sure. Yeah, it's kind of like a creepypasta story.
Yeah.
All right, so for my number 9, I picked 2008's Let the Right One In, the Swedish version, obviously, not the remake that came, I think, the same. Didn't they make like a remake?
I was going to say, they made a U.S. remake like the same year, like a year after.
I want to say it was like, pretty back-to-back with like the remake. But this one is, it's a romantic horror film directed by Thomas Alfredson, and it's based on the novel by the same name by John. I'm not going to be able to pronounce his middle and last name, so just call him John. Or Jan, or whatever they call it. I think it would be Jan in Sweden. So,
I'm a Swedish woman.
Basically, the story starts out, it's about this boy named Oscar who lives with his mother, Yvonne, in the suburb of Blackenburg, in 1982, and it's kind of a sad movie because you feel bad for Oscar because he's like a bullied kid and everything, and he spends his like evenings imagining his revenge on like on his classmates and everything like that.
Kids can be such dicks.
But he meets this girl. I think her name is Ely. I think is how you say it. Ely. And he's a girl about his age, and she's moved into the apartment that backs against his and his mother's. And she's with this man named Haken. I don't know if it's like a father or not, because he's not a vampire, which we come to find out that Ely's a vampire, but I don't think Haken's a vampire. So they be kind of like so Ely and Oscar. Ely says they can't be friends, but then they still end up kind of reforming like this relationship, and then Oscar like ends up like falling in love with Ely essentially, and
I think I've seen the remake of this.
Yeah, you've seen the remake, but So anyway, they end up kind of forming this relationship, and Ely says to Oscar like, you should stand up for yourself, for these bullies, and meanwhile, Haken's like murdering this guy and bringing him back to his apartment so Ely can feed on the blood because she's a vampire, and it's just like it's kind of, I can see why they call it a romantic horror because it is kind of romanticized, and it's the way it's filmed too is very kind of like romantic. Not in like the rom-com kind of way. It's just very like romantic. It's weird. It's just got like a romantic.
I know what you mean. I've seen the remake. I haven't seen the original.
Yeah, and it's kind of just like a friendship forming between like a vampire and a young boy.
And two recluse souls.
Yeah, and Ely looks. I mean, she's a young girl, but I mean, we don't really know how old she is because vampires technically are immortal. Right. So we don't really know how old she is, but it's just so after Oscar finds out that she's like a vampire. They kind of like he starts setting up like his bullies to get like killed by her. Aww. But then he like realizes what he's doing is like completely wrong and everything like that. And
he has like a moral.
Yeah, he kind of has like a moral awakening. And yeah, it's kind of a dark film too because it's obviously dealing with like murdering children. So. It's kind of dark in that aspect, but Yeah, it's a sweet movie. I don't remember exactly how it ends. I think they end up just kind of killing.
I think she gets mad at it, doesn't she?
Yeah, they
initially for not wanting to cooperate.
Yeah, and then like I think eventually they end up like running away together. Yeah, and like they fall in love and kind of run away together, which is that's I guess the romantic part of it.
It's like best case scenario for both of them, I'd say.
Yeah, they essentially just kind of like kill all the bullies and then they run away
and understand each other.
Yeah, they definitely like he's basically gonna fill the role of Haken now. Essentially, I think is like get her,
bring her people.
Yeah, bring her. So it's kind of like a catch-22. It's like was she just like kind of using him the whole time because she was sick of Haken kind of thing?
And was he using her to get rid of his bullies?
Yeah, that could be it too. Yeah, I never really thought of it like that, but it's definitely a great film. Obviously, it's you can unless you know Sweden, you can watch it without subtitles, and then obviously if you just want to watch the remake, I don't think there's a dubbed version of it, but it did pretty well. It was a $4 million budget, and it did $11 million at the box offices when it was released in Sweden.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
And then I'm not sure when they did the remake.
I think the remake did pretty well.
Yeah, it's not really saying because it's like it's not called Let the Right One In. It's like Let Me In or something like that. Is the remake? It's under a different name, but it's essentially
Let Me In.
Yeah, it's essentially the same movie.
It actually wasn't made until 2010. When was this?
Oh, 2008. So yeah, it was pretty much right back to back. But yeah, definitely a great movie. I prefer Let the Right One In better because it's just something. It's filmed like during winter time. There's something very like ambient about the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like a romantic,
It's like a darker vibe.
Yeah, very darker, and it's in the Nordic countries, so it's definitely got like that feel to it.
Yeah.
And he did a great job. Thomas Alfredson directing this. Like it shot beautifully. Very like vibrant, like with the blood and everything being on the blood was like so like contrasted with like the whiteness and the paleness of everything.
Of the snow and everything.
Yeah, it was just very beautifully shot.
Oh yeah, the girl that they had play her in the new one, Chloe Grace Moretz.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know why they keep trying to make her an actress. They keep trying.
Oh, excuse me.
Like, let's give you this role. Give you this role.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my number 9 pick right there. Let the Right One In.
All right. For my next one, my number 9, I picked another Aussie movie.
Aussie.
It came out in 2010. It's called The Reef, which I'm a sucker for a good shark movie.
Yeah, I don't.
You don't like them?
I do not care for shark movies.
I'm a sucker for a good shark movie.
Creature features like that, I do not care about.
There's something about shark movies because it's like they could happen to any one of us.
Yeah,
that is true. Anytime we go, I mean, obviously not any body of water, but when we go to the beach or something like that, somewhere tropical, it's like it could totally happen to us.
Right.
And it's happening so much in Florida right now. There's a ton of shark attacks.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And this movie, I don't know if you've seen it or you've heard of it, but it's based on a true story.
No, I did not know that. I've heard the movie, but I have not seen it, obviously.
It's basically all a reenactment, but essentially it's a group of, I think, 5 friends, like 2 girls, 3 men, and they're going out for, like, a little holiday in Australia. And they're on a boat. It's a smaller boat, because I guess you can't get to this part of the reef in, like, a bigger size boat.
Okay.
And they're not quite sure what happens, but some kind of current or something flips the boat over completely.
Gotcha.
And then they're underneath the boat, underwater. One guy, it's very scary. One guy was, like, in the bathroom when it happened, so he can't open the door, because, the pressure of the water.
Oh, yeah,
you can't open the door. So it's very scary. So they all get out one by one. They kind of crawl to the top of the boat, and now the boat's flipped over like this.
Capsized, huh?
Yes. Yeah. And they're all just kind of stuck there. So they one guy swims back down and tries to get a bunch of survival stuff. They have like a flare gun and stuff. He pulls out of the water. But he's like, we gotta swim. There's you could tell he knows what he's doing. He looks at his watch. He's like, north is that way, like west is this way. Like he knows exactly what he's doing. He's like, if we swim 10 to 12 miles, there's Turtle Island there. We can go there and we'll be safe.
Swimming 10 to 12 miles?
10 to 12 miles. So he pulls out some wetsuits and stuff from the boat. He keeps swimming underneath and coming back up top. Mm-hmm. And they all kind of agree to make this trek of 10 to 12 miles. Although this one guy, he's like, I fish in these waters. I don't know what's in them. I'm not fucking going.
Right.
So he stays behind, but the other 4 go. So it's 2 girls and 2 guys that make the trek.
Gotcha. And
they have some swimsuits. They have the boogie boards and kind of float on.
Yeah, yep.
So they're kind of making this, 10 to 12 mile swim.
That's insane.
And there's the guy's smart enough to be like, there's a current coming in. If we swim this way, it'll help to push us. And he's smart enough to know all
he's
that.
An oceanographer. Yeah. He's a guy, so he knows.
He's who you would want.
Yeah, he's the guy you want to be.
You're looking around on this boat and you're like, it all looks the same. So they're swimming. And it's similar to Jaws in the aspect where it's like you know something's coming, but you don't quite see it for the first maybe 30 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And then eventually they're out in the middle of the ocean, far away from their capsized boat, and this girl she's convinced she sees something, and they're like, what are you talking about? Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
And they have one pair of goggles for 4 people.
Right.
So the one guy just keeps looking underwater, and then finally you see the shark. And the shark's just toying with them.
Right.
Just swimming around them, just playing with them, messing with them, swims right by them, like hits them with their tail, like
sure.
Just messing with them.
Well, they see food and they want to play with it.
They want to play with it. And they're doing like, okay, I know you're not supposed to do this in horror movies, but they're doing everything you're not supposed to. Like they're making all this splashing, they're making all these noises, like they're all together in a big group and they're just splashing as much as they can, like just getting its attention even more.
Sure.
And the shark kind of like toys with them, and then he swims away, and you could tell that the shark had obviously followed them from the boat because it shows the shark at the boat previously, and he's like teasing the guy because the guy's standing up on the flipped over boat.
Back and forth.
Yeah, it's like cutting back and forth, and he must have followed their scent from the boat and swam.
Or ran up the same current they were riding.
Or ran up the same current, yeah. And then one of their boogie board gets kind of floated away, and they're looking and they don't see the shark, and they're like, well, we need to go get that boogie board because we can't swim with our full weight for this far.
No, I don't know.
So one guy, goes over to grab it. Of course, the shark attacks him.
Right.
He bleeds out. They keep swimming, and they basically kind of lose people one by one, and then there's a really dramatic scene at the end where they finally get to the island, and it's like the survivalist guy and a girl. Mm-hmm. He puts the girl up on the rock first, and as he's going up to the rock, the shark grabs him and takes him. But it's all a true story. Like, this all actually happened. This friend group, it actually happened.
Was it in Australia?
It was in Australia.
Okay, wow. No kidding.
I don't know if it was like the same exact area or like what Hollywood liberties they took with that. Mm-hmm. Maybe the final scene where he's jumping out and the shark ate him wasn't real, because that's kind of Hollywoodized, but for the most part. And then they never know what happened to the guy that stayed with the boat. It was never found.
Really?
The boat was never found, and he was never found.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
So I don't know if the shark ate him or what, but they come across like a huge sea turtle too, and the sea turtle's head is eaten. So they're kind of like, what's big enough to eat a sea turtle around us?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it would be a shark, right?
Yeah.
I mean, process of elimination would...
like, how scary.
Yeah, I just don't like them. I feel like they're all the same. It's just like, it's a shark is going to attack, like... And I'm like, Sharknado, I thought that was so stupid. Like,
well, yeah, obviously.
It's just like the same old story,
But I think the Reef is a little more... I get some more, like, cred because I think
it's based on a true story as well.
And it's drawn out. It's not just balls to the wall, like some sharks attacking you, chomping you. It's not super gory. It's not like Sharknado or the Megalodon or whatever.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Like, or Anaconda, like those snake movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate snakes, but those movies are just stupid because it's like there's no way... I mean, obviously in the past, prehistoric times, but I guess they're not, like, the idea's not that crazy, but...
And I mean, the idea of you, like, swimming out in a tiny boat because you can't get there with a big boat and it flips over and then you're exposed to the elements, that's just as terrifying to me.
Right.
I don't know, for some reason I like movies like that where they're stranded and they have nowhere to go and they're like, oh, we have to swim this many miles and see what's out there. Yeah. Because I put myself in that situation, like, what would I do? Would I stay in the boat? Would I...
Right.
Whatever, like, because all you have in the boat is a flare gun.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, and then you gotta wait for rescue, and it's like, if you shoot the flare and no one's there to see it, then
that's
you
what
didn't
they were
do
saying.
anything.
They're like, have you seen any planes fly over us? And they're all like, no, we've been out here for 3 days and there's been no planes.
Yeah,
so.
But I mean, I don't get... you gotta either stay put or move, so, I honestly think I would just stay put and, like, hope something...
I just honestly hope I'm never in one of those situations, because I would be like, which way's north?
Yeah, because I'm not gonna swim 10 miles.
He was literally looking at the clock, or his clock, he's like, okay, well, the big hand is on the noon symbol, and then the sun's over here, so this way's north. I'm like, I would be lost.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know you could do that. That's gotta be some survivalist thing. I had no idea that was a thing.
No clue.
Alright, so for my number 8, I picked 2007 French-Swiss independent horror film directed by Xavier Gens.
I was waiting for a French movie.
Front Tears. Yes, this is... we've talked about a lot of the French extreme horror, so I picked one that we really haven't talked about. Mm-hmm. So this one's definitely a favorite of mine because it's kind of just balls to the wall. The way it's shot, it's kind of like almost action right from the beginning of the movie. It starts out... as these 4 criminals, there's like this riot going on in Paris because there's like a far right wing president being reelected. So like, you know, Paris, when they don't like things happening, they will
right
just,
now with the Olympics,
the whole city like just goes into a giant riot, you know, which, you know, awesome for them. That's the way you get change. Yeah, that's how you get change.
I think at one point they like raised their taxes like 2 cents or something, and everybody like rioted.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody went to work. Nobody did anything.
Right. They just shut down the whole city. Just goes into complete chaos. So perfect time for these criminals to.
Criminal.
Yeah, they're kind of like Muslim Arab youths, and they do. They're like perfect time to go while the city's rioting. All the police are tied up. They decide to rob a bank, and basically that's how the movie starts out. Is them they're like running out of the bank. One of their friends have been shot. There's 5 of them. Their names are Alex, Tom, Farid, and I'm sorry. There is 5 of them. Alex, Tom, Farid, pregnant Yasmin, and her brother Sammy.
She's pregnant? She's robbing a bank?
Yeah, she's pregnant. And I believe it's Sammy who gets shot. And so they're kind of like carrying him, running, you know, out, and they flee to the countryside. Before they do that, they drop Sammy off at the emergency room, and they're, like, arguing the whole time, like, don't do that, like, they're gonna know that he robbed a bank, like, it's a gunshot wound, you know, so they're gonna be like, what, how'd you get shot, and everything. Right. So they kind of just leave him outside the ER, and then, I'm sorry, I'm losing train of thought here. So they leave him outside of the ER and everything like that, and then, they, like, flee to the countryside, essentially, the 4 of them, and then, they get to this weird, like, it's like an inn of some sort. It doesn't look like an inn, but it's, like, out in the countryside, so they, like, pull in, and obviously they're not going to know who these people are, you know, because there's no TV or anything out there saying, like, these people are bank robbers or anything.
It's, like, best case scenario.
Yeah, so they kind of just walk in, like, you know, everything's normal and everything, but it's, like, right from the beginning, it takes, like, a weird turn. There's, like, these girls there, and they're, like, prostitutes, essentially. Like, they're trying to, like, you know, get the guys. Seduce is the word I was looking for. Get the business and everything like that. So right off the bat, it's kind of like, what the hell? And, you know, Jasmine's kind of like, what the hell? You know, what the hell's going on here and everything. And so they kind of, like, you know, get put up in rooms, and, after, like, a couple hours, like, the 2 guys, I think it's Farid and, what's his name, Alex, they end up, like, having sex with one of the girls. But then, like, this guy bursts in and, like, starts, like, beating the girls. And, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, get off them kind of thing. And you're kind of like, what the hell? That's kind of weird. You know, you figured, like, he'd be in on it, too. And eventually what ends up happening is they take, like, the 4 of them hostage, the remaining 4 of them, and they're, like, got them tied up at this table, and there's, like, this old creepy dude at the end of the table, and it comes to find out he was like a SS death camp, you know, Nazi back in World War II, and he's, like, trying to create, like, the perfect race and everything like that.
Oh, God.
And basically, from that point on, it's, like, you know, fight for survival. And they've been obviously, like, kidnapping people and trying to, like, he's, like, a scientist, so he's trying to, like, take traits from, like, you know, different ethnicities and make, like, the perfect, you know, perfect human race, you know, the perfect race. So definitely some Nazi exploitation going on in this movie. So yeah, and then it just goes balls to the wall. They're trying to, like, escape. There's a bunch. It's super, super gory. It got an NC-17 rating. Like, after the first week it was released in France, it was, and then it was, like, pulled from theaters because it's an NC-17 film. It's not going to get a theater release there and everything.
It's hard to get. It's hard to get an NC-17.
Yeah, it's super violent. It's very, very violent. And they end up, like, I think it's Yasmin and what's his name, Alex. They kind of escape into, like, this underground, like, mine shaft that, like, the property was built on, and, like, these 4 people, or the people that run this inn, these Nazis, they're, like, obviously chasing after them. But there's this awesome scene, I think I've talked about it before, and one of, like, the best deaths. It's, like, this girl, the Yasmin, she's getting, like, chased by this guy, and he's, like, in this weird, like, butcher shop type thing. Like, they butcher their own, like, animals there, and there's, like, this meat table saw, and she, like, turns it on, and, like, he calls her, like, a bitch because she's, like, on the ground and, like, cuts him or something like that, and then she just, like, gets up and just, like, attacks him and throws him down on this table saw, and she's, like, and he's just getting there's blood flying everywhere. There's like organs going everywhere. It's super, super violent. Definitely a great movie. And essentially what ends up happening at the end is Yasmin's the only one to make it out alive, and there was a couple like little girls there. I don't know if I think they were born like out of like incest or something like that.
Or like this perfect race kind of thing.
Yeah, and so she's like, there's this one little girl, I forget her name, but she's like, come with me, and she's like, no, I'm going to stay behind, because ultimately all the Nazis are dead at this point. They're like, one by one, they've been killed by Yasmin and like the other guys, but obviously they've died too. So Yasmin's like the sole survivor, and she's like, "Come with me." You know, and she's like, "No, I'm not gonna go." I think the little girl's name is Eva, and but she's got to take care of like the other kids there too. So she kind of just says, "No, I'm not coming with you. I gotta stay and raise my sisters and you know, brothers and everything like that." And yeah, she eventually, I think, gets to the border of Switzerland, and Yasmin does, and she's surrendered there to the authorities, because they were now looking for her, because, you know, obviously now they know the bank's been robbed, you know, that's another priority besides the riot, so she ends up surrendering to authorities, but at the same time, she's probably going to, you know, get off with, you know, explaining to them there's like this crazy thing going on.
Yeah, and I helped like her.
Yeah, so it's an awesome movie. I know I did a probably butcher job explaining it, because I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm trying to just remember and read the synopsis at the same time, and it's hard to do that, so.
I will say, I think, as of recently, I found that movies, one of my favorite genres of movies is when criminals just knock on the wrong door.
Yes.
Like, you think that they're, like, the bad guy and they're the big bad person, and then they knock on somebody else's door that's way more fucked up than they are.
Yeah.
And there's so many movies like that, and I think it's so interesting and so fun.
I know, yeah.
Like, they knock on the wrong fucking door.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that, yeah, it's part of that whole early 2000s, mid-2000s French extreme horror, you know, so there's a lot of violence in this. It's not for, like, somebody that's, like, sensitive with violence. There's a lot of, like, you know, domestic violence and stuff like that.
I wanted to watch like a casual horror movie.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So, but all these like French, you know, mid-2000s French films you got to have like a thick skin to watch these.
Yeah.
And I definitely like it, and it's one of my favorite foreign horror movies. I wanted to put Martyrs, but we've talked so much about Martyrs that this is obviously another one that I really enjoy too. As far as I mean, the idea,
far as the gore,
the violence,
not the idea, obviously.
Yes. But yeah, it was definitely like a crazy plot twist too, because it's like, holy shit, these guys are freaking like Nazis and like experimenting still and stuff. And it's weird because it's in, you know, France and Switzerland, which were, you know,
not Nazi country.
Yeah, you know, this is in France, so I mean, they were fighting against the Nazis, but obviously they flee after, you know,
they trickle through, I guess.
Yeah, they fled after they lost, so definitely possibly could happen still.
Fucking Nazis, man.
But yeah, very good film. And it did pretty good at the, actually I don't know, because it was pulled from theaters, so there's really no box office information, but it was a $3 million budget, and it definitely, definitely did. I imagine it would be very good. Yeah, it would do very good in theaters. I think it got like a week release here in the U.S., but then it was pulled, you know, in select theaters because you just can't show those kind of NC-17 films in, like, theaters. It's weird, though, because
I don't understand. Well, I guess, like, Terrifier got a theater release, but I guess that wouldn't be as, like, domestic violence, kind of. It's gory, but it would be, like, the domestic...
Well, I mean, times have changed now, too. Yeah. You know, so I think it's...
And Terrifier stays away from, like, assault or
anything
like that.
I don't get the whole, like, what the NC-17, what that actually dictates nowadays, like how you get an NC-17 rating in, like, 2020, you know. I could see a little, like, back then it was, you know, it could be done. I mean, it has to be extreme violence, too. I don't know. I mean, it depends on who the people are reviewing the movies. And this was in France, too, so obviously, maybe in America, we're obviously a lot less, you know, sensitive to violence, so that's probably why.
It says in 2024, it's basically just anybody or any movie that has an adult content not suitable for anyone under 18. That's the new, like, thing, but that's a lot of movies.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it could just be, because this is in France, it got the NC-17 rating. Maybe here it's just R, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know. I guess it depends.
Either. So, that's my number, what is it, number 7 here? Number 8? I forget which number.
I think 7 we're on.
I have no idea what we're on. No, we're on number 8. So that was my number 8. That's 2007, The Frontiers.
Okay, so for my number 8, I picked 2008's Eden Lake, which this came out of the UK. And this is definitely an underrated horror movie. I don't think it ever got... Well, it did get a theater release. But I think for the most part, it's always been on streaming services. Nobody really talks about it. I've never really heard anybody talk about it. I think it's very underrated.
Sure.
But again, I like it because it's realistic to an extent.
Yeah.
It's essentially about this couple, and they have this like little weekend getaway. Trying to be like on their honeymoon, their little cute selves.
Yeah.
And they're kind of making out at the beach, laying out, and there's this group of kids, and the husband tells the kids like, "Hey, you need to turn that music down. It's way too loud."
Right.
And the kids are just like, "Yeah," they ignore him. And he says it again, like, "Can you please turn that music down? We're trying to relax," or whatever. And after that, the kids just, like, they leave, but then they end up hunting this couple.
Yeah.
And, like, he wishes he never said to the kids,
yeah,
he turn the music down.
Right, exactly.
Because it's just not worth it at that point.
Right.
And then they try to go to, like, a local restaurant and, tell the waitress, like, "Hey, there's these kids. They were kind of harassing us, whatever." And the waitress was one of the kids' moms. It was like, "Oh, they would never do that. They're good kids."
Yeah.
They would never do that.
Right.
Being all, like,
yeah, they would
defensive
never do
about
that. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Eventually the kids go on to, like, stab the couple's dog. They kill the husband. They try to, like, burn him alive. And then they just torture the fuck out of the wife.
Yeah.
They, like, tie her up against her dead husband's body. Like, it's very brutal.
Yeah.
It's, like...
Yeah, definitely.
Very, very gruesome, very brutal, and then they just terrorize this woman.
Yes.
They chase her throughout the woods. The whole movie is her trying to run away from them, and them trying... It's like a cat and mouse game.
Right.
They're trying to chase after her, and then at the end, she kind of gets away. Like, she runs to this neighbor's house, and the kids are smart, because they show up to the neighbor's house that she's hiding at, and they're like, "She killed all her friends."
Yeah.
And even though she killed them in self-defense, they say, she killed all her friends, so she ends up getting blamed in the end. I don't know if she gets killed, I don't remember.
Right.
But it's just a good... Yeah, I think she just, like, runs off. Her fate is left unknown.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie, like I said. I think it's more realistic than others, I would say.
Yeah, because that's something I could see a bunch of little punks doing.
You're, like, at this nice weekend getaway. They're, like, in this remote spot, the English countryside, and there's nobody really around except people that live there, and they know when, like, a newcomer's there.
Right.
And if you're gonna fuck with the kids, maybe they'll turn on you and just toy with you.
Yeah.
Like, they probably know the area way better than you.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And that's essentially what they did, and it's pretty violent, I would say, for the type of movie it is. Like, it's advertised as more of a thriller.
Right.
But I would say it's pretty violent.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's... I definitely think it would be violent, too.
But very underrated, very well done movie.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed watching it, too.
Yeah.
I definitely liked it.
I haven't seen it in a minute. I should probably rewatch it.
Yeah, I know, we gotta watch these movies before we talk about them. But it's hard because there's, like, so many.
Well, I watched it, like, a year ago. It's
right.
just... All I remember is the husband got killed off super early. I remember that was, like, weird, because usually it's not like that. And they kind of torture the wife, which she didn't even say anything. The husband said something.
I know, exactly. So it was just, well, that's like, then that's like, yeah, now it's just like a murder movie, you know, because, they're just trying to kill the wife now.
Yeah.
Alright, so for my number 7, I picked 2023's, Australian horror thriller film, You'll Never Find Me. So this one's more of like I wouldn't call it a thriller, it's more of a psychological movie.
Was this a Shudder original we watched?
I think it was, yeah. So it starts out with this like older guy named Patrick, and he's like in this trailer somewhere in Australia, and he's just sitting there like listening to radio by himself. And it's way it's filmed is very like creepy. I don't know. It's very like...
It's like a rainy night.
Slow burn. Yeah, it's like a thunderstorm. He's in like this double wide, not even a double wide trailer. And he's just sitting there drinking tea. And then he gets a flashback of this woman outside his car on a rainy day, kind of like, so he's like reminiscing about that. And then all of a sudden he hears a knock at the door. And he's like, what the heck? And, he opens up the door and there's this girl standing there. And he's like... how the heck she get in here? Because he's in a trailer park and the gates are like closed. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I ran from like the beach to get here, and my car won't start and everything, and I need a phone sketchy. Essentially, yeah. And so he's kind of like he's very like hesitant to let her in. He's like in like the whole time you're watching this, it's like very like weird how it's shot because it's like you feel like he's like waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, the whole time he's just very, like, on edge, it feels like. He's just very on edge.
Yeah,
and,
you're watching it and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, he's very nervous guy. And so he, like, essentially just lets her come in, and he offers her a towel and a tea, but she says she's not going to be staying too long, and she needs to use the phone. And he kind of, like, ignores the request to give her the phone. He gives her, like, a towel and, you know, some dry clothes and everything like that. And he starts questioning her. He's like, so you said you were at the beach? Like, the beach is very far away. Like, how'd you run from the beach to here? I mean, that's got to be, like, 15 miles, you know? And she's just like, she kind of doesn't answer that question either. It's very, like, they're not answering each other's questions this whole movie. It's very, very weird. And, so she keeps asking for, like, a phone and everything, and he's still, like, not, like, responding to that question. And then they're kind of, like, just sitting there talking, and then he's like, would you like to play a game of cards? And then it's like, what the hell were you watching? Like, you're kind of like, what's going on here? Because, like, you don't know if he's good or if she's good or if, you know, vice versa. He's bad or she's bad because he's very nervous about something, and she's, like... Obviously, just like some young girl showing up to this like random guy's house, but at the same time, like none of her story is making any sense at the same time.
It reminds me of if anybody's seen Barbarian. It reminds me of the beginning of Barbarian when it's Bill Skarsgård and the main character, the girl. I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
But you're like convinced that one of them is like sketchy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like either he's lying or she's lying. The whole time you're like one of them is like his story isn't making sense, but hers also isn't. Like who do we trust here? Like, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, the woman's, like, they're conversing, and then, like, I think she, like, drops something, and then she goes, like, underneath the table, and she finds, like, this locket that contains hair, and then, she, like, comes back up off the table after he, like, you know, wanted to play cards, and he's like, I know you've been lying to me, and then she's like, well, I know you've been lying to me, too. So it's kind of like this cat and mouse kind of game. Like, you don't understand, like, really who's good or bad. And
I forget why she can't leave. Is it because it's, like, downpour?
It's still raining, and he's like, well, there's, like, a phone booth he said he's going to give her a ride to.
But it was raining too
But it's
hard.
still raining too hard for him to drive. And then, but it's very weird because it's like, why don't you just leave, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what you're kind of like, well, this guy's being creepy. Why don't you just leave?
Yeah, you're better off in the rain.
Yeah, exactly, you know? So, eventually, like, he, like, makes her some food and everything like that, and, you know, they're playing cards and they're playing the game bullshit, obviously, because, you know, that's kind of goes fits the theme here, you know, they're both bullshitting one another. And then, I think eventually what ends up happening is, like, she finds this, he goes outside to, like, fix something, because something, like, hit the roof of the camper and, like, water started coming in. So she starts to, like, snoop around the house, or the trailer, snoop around the trailer, and goes in, like, his bedroom, and there's, like, a dead girl laying on the bed, and so she's, like, freaked out now, and so she's, like, hiding, and then he comes back inside and is, like, basically kills her. And, you know, he's telling her, like, you know, he's telling her, like, I met this girl at the gas station, like, you know, perfect timing. So this guy's, like, a serial killer, you know, he's like, I can tell you about my first one, too. And this girl's, like, laying there dying. And then he's, like, reminiscing about his, like, first time killing a girl. And it was a girl that was, at the beach and knocked on his car window. And he was like, it couldn't have gotten any more perfect than that. And he's, like, sitting there reminiscing. The girl's dead, but he's, like, still talking about it out loud. And it's, like, flashing back to that moment. He's like, oh, yeah, she had, like, this tattoo on. I think it was on her stomach or something like that. And then, like, all of a sudden, he just kind of, like, puts two and two together. He looks at the girl's stomach, and it's the same tattoo.
So she's the girl.
Of the girl, yeah. And then it takes this weird, like, twist where, like, obviously that girl that he killed the first time, his first victim, she's obviously not real. He was just imagining that, and he starts going with, like, this wicked psychosis, and he's like, all these girls that he's murdered are, like, now just in his trailer. There's, like, 15 of them or something.
Which I love. I love the karma of that.
Yeah, and he's just, like, he's basically going insane now, and they're, like, basically forcing him to, like, pour this poison, because that's how he drugs them and then kills them. He gives them, like, a poison.
So taste your own medicine kind of
thing.
thing.
And then, like, eventually they're, like, the spirits of these girls are, like, forcing him to pour the poison into his bottle of, I don't know, whatever whiskey he was drinking, and he chugs it, and then he, like, comes to reality again, and he's just, like, sitting there laughing and, like, ha, 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 and then he, like, falls dead. You know, he drops dead because the poison kills him. But it's a very weird movie. I definitely would recommend going and watching this. I think it's on Shudder. It's super, I don't know, it's just very cool the way this guy filmed it.
It is very cool.
I don't know.
I think it's a Shudder original.
Yeah.
It's a good, like, rainy day movie.
Yeah, it's very, like, the vibe of it is very, it's very weird. Because, like, the whole time, like I said, you don't know who's telling the truth or not, and
you don't for the last, like, 20 minutes.
You really still don't know. Even when the girl finds the body, you're still like, okay, I mean, yeah, he's bad, but what are you doing there? What are you doing there? Like,
yeah, were you actually at the beach? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, still, like, there's all these questions, and it's just really cool how they did that with the filming and everything and the script.
I'd like to watch it again,
cool.
like, now knowing the outcome of it. I'd like to watch it again to see if maybe he says something that's sketchy that you wouldn't pick up on the first time.
Yeah, I think you could probably definitely find some things. And same goes for, like, the girl, too, because it was kind of just like, okay, like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, and, you know, but he's also bullshitting, too, so it's cool because he's like, and that's why he's so nervous, is because he's a serial killer and he's just like scared he's gonna get caught, you know. And
that's why he lives in a gated community in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. He lives in this remote trailer park out in the middle of nowhere, you know. And
what kind of movie is that? Australian?
Yeah, it's Australian. Yeah. But yeah, definitely a really good one. So that's You'll Never Find Me.
Yeah, I believe it's still on Shudder.
Yeah, definitely. Check it out. Definitely a good watch.
Alright, my next movie I picked is Goodnight Mommy, which this came out in 2014. It was filmed in Austria. It's all in German.
Mm-hmm.
I think they remade it in the U.S. just recently, like within the last 5 years. There's a U.S. remake of it.
Yeah, I think I did watch the U.S. remake. I haven't seen the original.
But I love the concept of it. It's so unique to me. It's a mom, and she has a complete facial reconstructive cosmetic surgery, and they put these bandages all around her face, so basically all you can see is her mouth and her eyes.
Yeah.
And she has 2 sons, they're twins, Elias and Lucas.
Okay.
And ever since her surgery, they kind of start thinking, like, she's acting weird. Like, usually she reads me, I think it's like usually she sings me to sleep or something, but she hasn't been.
Yeah.
She enforces all these strict rules, like no light in the house, you can't make any noise, you can't play around. And, like, whenever she talks, she only acknowledges Elias and not Lucas. So she only acknowledges the one son and not the other.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of like, why aren't you talking to my brother? Like, why are you just talking to me? Like, you're acting weird.
Right.
And it's kind of a slow burn of a movie, but it's a cool movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucas is kind of convincing Elias, like, that's not our mom. Like, that's somebody else that came home and put those bandages on. That's not our mom anymore. And she's going to hurt us or she's going to do something to us.
Well, yeah, because she has been, like, kind of being violent, I think, toward, like,
I think she spanks
the kid.
One.
And, like, yelling at him a lot more and everything and just being, like, short with him.
Which is probably just because she's on meds or whatever it is.
Yeah, yes.
But yeah, it's kind of cool because he kind of gaslights himself into being like, that's not my mom. Like, both of the boys are like, that's not her. Something happened. Which is really, really cool to me. I think that's a cool concept because the bandages and everything. It just reminds me of like a Tales of the Crypt episode.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Like, I just think it's cool.
Right.
But then there's like the biggest plot twist ever because at the end, Elias and Lucas, they tie their mom up and they're ready to burn the house down. And they're like, we need to protect ourselves from our mom. This is not our mom. You're going to hurt us, whatever. And the biggest plot twist ever is the mom says that Lucas had died in a car accident a few years prior.
Right.
And the whole time Elias had been imagining him as an hallucination.
Yeah.
But when he imagined him, he was more like an evil twin.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, saying like, kill your mom, kill your mom.
Yes, yeah.
But Lucas didn't believe her, and he lit the house on fire anyways.
Yeah, and killed the mother.
And killed the mom anyways.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I thought that was a really good plot twist. I kind of, like, caught on to that, like, almost immediately, though, because I noticed, like, the mom, like, and, like, the Elias, I think, is the one that's dead. Yeah, he would, like, go and hide when the mom would come.
Yeah,
like, he would, like, hide under the covers or something like that, so it's like, he wasn't even really there, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, because the mom is only talking to the one kid. Like, he's never saying, like, you and your brother go upstairs,
I only picked up on it, like, a couple times, but I was still just like, maybe she just... I don't know, maybe she's high on meds, like maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was this specifically happening. I didn't think he was imagining him and he was dead.
No, I thought it was like just like a ghost or something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was like a hallucination, but yeah, that would make sense. You know, he's like in this weird like delusion, you know.
Yeah, it's like a messed up version of like Home Alone, like the things they try to do to her to knock her out because they're kids. So,
Yeah,
like, they
yeah,
set
they're
up
like
this whole
10 years old. Yeah,
booby trap of her when she wakes up that would hit her and knock her out.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
it was a
cool
good movie. I really liked it. It was definitely like a little different.
Unique concept,
style,
which
yeah.
I love. I love when new movies are different.
Yes, definitely. All right, so for my number, is it 6 now? I think we're on.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was your 7.
My number 6 is Coming Home in the Dark. So this is a 2021 New Zealand psychological thriller film. And it's based on a 1995 short story by the same name. It was directed by James Ashcroft and written by Eli Kent. And there's some not really famous people, I think, in the cast. Yeah, so this is basically starts out, it's like this family, they're somewhere out in New Zealand, in like the country, and they're like walking through like these tall plains of grass and everything to have like a picnic and everything, and they're sitting there just, you know, minding their own business. They got 2 young boys with them, and they're just enjoying their time together, sitting there having a picnic. Then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, the dad stops and he's like staring, and there's behind the mom and the 2 kids, there's like a man, not like right behind him, but like off in the distance, and you know, he's kind of like, what the hell, like that's kind of weird, and like so the men start walking up, and then another guy comes out from behind like the dad and starts like walking up behind them, and they're like, you know, kind of at first nice to them. They're like, you know, the 2 strangers, they're nice to them, and I think they're asking them like if they can join or something like that.
I thought they asked for directions or something harmless.
Yeah, there's some like, they were kind of like dialect, but like immediately after they like turned violent, and they at gunpoint, and you know, they got the whole family at gunpoint and everything like that. They're basically like robbing them, like, give me your phone and everything like that, give me all your stuff. And then Mandrake and Tubbs are the 2 killers the two drifters that appear, and then the family is Alan and his wife Jill and their 2 teenage sons, Mika and Jordan. And out of nowhere, Mandrake just kills the 2 kids, like just shoots them.
Shocking.
Yeah, it was like, and this is maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into the movie, just like shoots them both right in the head.
Yeah.
And like, you're the mom and dad are like, what the screaming, you know, and just freaking out. And he's just like, no remorse on his face.
Nope.
And Tubbs, his accomplice, has kind of got like issues. Like he's not like, he's just got some issues. And he's kind of like the same thing, just like no remorse on his face and everything. And then so
killing kids.
yeah, just killing these 2 teenagers. And I was like, damn, that's like wicked violent. And so then Mandrake starts like questioning the husband and wife, and he reveals to Alan that Mandrake knows him and knows that he was a teacher at this boys' school. So then they basically like march them out back to their car, and they take their car, and they take them hostage, the husband and the wife, Alan and Jill, Mandrake and Tubbs do, and they're driving down the highway, and they're talking like the whole time. The movie's like kind of in the car for a little bit, and they're, you know, he's like, I know what you did at this boys' school and everything, and that's where Mandrake and Tubbs went. You know, it was a boys' school, so there was a lot of abuse going on there. And it was like notorious school. And I think it's actually kind of based on a true story. There was like a place like this in New Zealand that had like this boys' home that was notorious for like sexual and physical assault.
Well, what I remember, he's like lying through his teeth. Like the wife's like, "What did you do? What did you do?"
Yeah, and he's not saying.
Nothing.
He's like, "I wasn't like that's not me. I never did anything bad. Like you have to be. You got me mistaken." And like you kind of like think that at first,
you
but
do kind of sympathize with him.
Yeah, but then at the same time, it's like, no, this guy definitely did something. And come to find out, yes, he did actually beat this kid Mandrake when he was a young boy, and he's basically held it against him ever since then, and like hunted him down and found him. Tubbs, on the other hand, kind of has a little bit more remorse for him, and after they kill the wife, they basically kill her. They kill her in the car and then dump her body over an overpass. They got the husband at the old boys' school. They drove him there, and like are making him confess, and he's like confessing, "I'm sorry, please don't kill me," blah blah blah. And
why would you want to live? Your whole family just got slaughtered.
I know. And Tubbs actually has like remorse, so he actually ends up killing Mandrake and letting Alan go. And Tubbs just kind of walks off into the night. But Alan, I think, ends up unaliving himself at the end of the movie too, because his whole family has just been murdered.
What's the point of that?
So, but it's very, very weird. And then Tubbs actually, it's like the last shot is Tubbs just like sitting on like this hill, like watching the sun come up, and he's crying, like just like, I can't believe what just happened. I can't believe what I just did. You know, it's kind of a very sad movie, actually. Like just the whole like aspect of the film, you know, with the whole sexual abuse and everything against the kids.
Yeah, because it happens all the time, but
yeah, it's very sad. But it definitely, like at the end of the movie, you kind of feel like good that Mandrake killed them, but at the same time, you still feel bad that like he killed. You know, the wife and husband. You know, the wife and son. I mean, I would just kill the husband if he's the one that did it.
That's what I was just gonna say. Like logically, you would be like, "Let me kill him because he's the one that hurt me." But then it's like, what's gonna hurt him more is killing his family.
Yeah,
and
watching
having him live.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the kids are innocent. The wife's innocent.
They didn't do anything. Yeah.
So I was like, I see where they were going with that, trying to make his life miserable as much as they can, but you're taking away innocent, like purely innocent lives.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it's kind of a dark film.
Like that's some dark, like I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like soulless behavior to like go and kill somebody's whole family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, these kids at this boys' home, they were like, you know, they had problems. You know, that's the reason why they were there. You know, was because
they got manipulated and taken advantage of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And at the same time, so they just basically they were. I mean, what do you expect's going to happen? You know, you do that kind of stuff to these kids that already have problems. You know. So yeah, that's my number 6. Definitely a good watch. Coming Home in the Dark.
So for my number 6, I picked Veronica, which this came out in 2017. It's a Spanish film. Mm-hmm. It's a Netflix original, I believe. Which I remember when this came out, people were like, "This is the scariest movie I've ever seen. Like, you guys have to watch it." And I was like, "It's good, but like, it's not the scariest movie I've ever seen by any means."
Right.
But what is cool about it is it's loosely based on true events from a case in 1991. About this woman named Estefana. Mm-hmm. And I guess she mysteriously died after using a Ouija board, which is kind of what happens in Veronica. She's a 15-year-old girl, and, you know, she lives with her siblings. They live in, I think, Madrid. Mm-hmm. And they're like a working class, little suburbs or whatever.
Yeah.
And her and her friends decide to do a seance and use a Ouija board. And, of course, like every movie, you know, it attaches onto her, and from there she just kind of gets possessed. She starts having seizures. She starts kind of attacking her family and attacking her siblings.
Sure, yeah.
I forgot if I think she dies at the end. Yeah, she dies at the end. She suddenly, in the movie, she just like burst into flames and caught fire.
Right.
And then just unexplainably died, and she was granted 15 years old. So everybody was like, "What's happened?" And I guess in the actual case, that's what happened too. Is she just mysteriously died after using a Ouija board.
Oh, that's wild.
So I mean, loosely based on the events.
Sure. Well, like Hollywood, all that kind of like based on a true story. You know, they make it all.
Yeah, but I guess it was the first time that the Spanish police reported officers witnessing paranormal activity.
Oh, really?
So it must have been a pretty strong entity for officers to even be like, "Yeah, that's a ghost."
That's true.
But I guess it happened in 1996, 5 years after this case, when they like recanted the events of it. It was the first time the cops actually said, "Yeah, there was paranormal activity."
Wow, no kidding. Okay.
I mean, it's still a good movie. I wouldn't say it deserves all the hype it gets. Like people say, it's, you know.
Well, I think it was the whole because it's based on a true story, you know, kind of thing, you know.
Which, I mean, yeah, just moral of the story, don't fuck with a Ouija board. I mean,
I know, I don't get why people keep playing with those in movies. Like, clearly they're not, you know, a good thing to play with, you know.
Yeah, don't fuck with the Ouija board. I mean, there are some creepy scenes, like when she is possessed, of like the screaming, the yelling, the seizing, things like that.
Sure,
There's some good possession scenes, but
yes,
it's worth a watch, I'd say.
No, I liked it, but yeah, I didn't think it was like any different.
Oh, I was expecting to be blown away.
Yeah, I'm like, this isn't any different than like Paranormal Activity or like The Conjuring. You know, it's nothing like, oh my god.
I would say it's more similar to The Conjuring.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean, but like that whole, it's supposed to be super scary, you know.
I agree.
All right, so for my number 5, I picked 1974's French supernatural horror movie Los Demoniacs, a.k.a. The Demoniacs. And I think I might have talked about this a little bit before because we did a famous directors episode, and it was directed by Jean Rollin, and he's one of my favorite directors. But this movie is about a band of notorious shipwreckers that force a ship to crash in a harbor, and they ransack its contents. And there's 5 of these bandits that, you know, ransack the ships and everything like that. And There's the captain, who's followed by Lee, Bosco, Paul, and the captain's lover, Tina. And they're basically a bunch of thugs. And there's 2 young women on board the ship that they just crashed, and they rape them and they beat them and everything. And that's kind of gets Tina, the captain's wife or lover, like that kind of gets her off on that, like that kind of violence. Mm-hmm. And so they basically leave the girls for dead after that. They think they die, you know, and the captain's at this local tavern. It's kind of like a period horror, like probably like, I don't know, like 1800s, you know, so it's like a period style horror. So fast forward, they're at this tavern, the captain and a couple of the Bosco and Paul and them, they're all there, and all of a sudden, the captain starts seeing the ghost of these 2 girls that he just like killed, you know, and you know, Bosco thinks he's just in like a drunken stupor because he's not seeing anything, and the captain's like going apeshit. He's like in this frenzy. He's like, "Get away from me! Get away from me!" And this is all in French, so you're obviously reading subtitles. And the bartender actually is a clairvoyant, so she already kind of knows like what he's seeing and why he's seeing them. Like he's got like a guilty conscience kind of thing. And
as he should.
Yeah, they kind of bring the captain under control and everything like that, and the girls kind of disappear. So the shipwreckers still think the girls are actually alive, and they track them to the ship cemetery with a intent on killing them. But so they they think they're still living on the ship, like so they set the ship on fire to lure the girls out, and so they're all still there, and it really turns out they were ghosts. Yeah, so there's really nobody on the ship, but they do come out of the ship, but it's only the captain again, like a couple others that can see them and everything like that. So yeah, essentially the movie kind of ends there, basically. Like the captain goes insane. They all kind of, it's like the ghosts of these girls are like making them turn on each other. And so like the captain kills Tina, and then Bosco kills Paul, and then I think Paul or Bosco is like the only one still alive, and he's
like making them do their dirty work.
Yes, essentially, yeah. It's like kind of just like the revenge. They're getting the revenge through Bosco and everything like that. And Bosco is trying to like get them off of like where they tied them up like before they died and everything like that. Like their dead bodies are just there. He's like, I'm sorry, and then he ends up like drowning because the tide's coming in and everything. And at the end of the movie, there's it's kind of because Jean Rollin always did this thing with I don't know, like just it's kind of artsy film that he did. You know, they're very like artsy style, and like along the top of the hill down in this cove where the shipwrecks. There's this clown standing there with I think it's like an exorcist or something like that, and they're watching like just that's how the movie ends. It's like the clown and the exorcist are watching this ship you know, get like the tide's coming in and everything's getting taken back out to sea. Very like artsy. He did a lot of artsy stuff with his movies. This is definitely one of my favorites. The whole vibe of the movie is just super cool. It reminds me of like a pirate movie, you know, like
it sounds like a pirate movie.
Artsy pirate movie, and it's very, very well done. Again, a lot of people don't really care for Jean Rollin because I'm saying his name wrong, Jean Rollin, because there is like it's very like he's very sexual and he very sexualizes women and everything like that in his movies. But that's what they do in France, you know. They're comfortable enough with that.
I think it's more normalized over there.
In Europe, I think it is
taboo.
Yes, but yeah, there's a lot of people just think it's not really like art that he's doing. It's more like softcore porn. Yeah, it's more like porn, which I agree. I mean, because it's not like, I mean, but the way this one shot it is very like artsy, you know, with like the clown being there and everything. It's kind of like these weird.
And like the deeper meaning of it going back into the ocean.
Yeah, it's very like, you know, he's like stretching for the art thing there. And he's one of my favorite directors. I love like basically every movie that he's made. They're so creepy and like there's very little dialect too.
That's always creepy.
Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of like you're filling in the blanks. Yeah.
People don't like silence.
Yes, that is true. So
people have to fill silence with things.
Right. Yeah, and actually I think on Arrow they have I don't know if it's still on Arrow, but they have a Jean Rollin collection that's like got like all of his big movies that he's made that you can watch, you know, if you have the Arrow package. So yeah, that's my number 5, The Demoniacs.
Okay, so for my number 5, I'm gonna be 100% honest. I should have rewatched it before I did this.
What is it?
But it's a good movie. I picked The Platform.
Oh yeah.
Which this is a Spanish movie.
Uh-huh.
I love the concept of it, but I watched it, I think when it first came on Netflix. It came out in 2019, and I don't think I watched it since then. But I do like the social commentary of it. Essentially, it's a prison, but the way it works is I believe there's 130 levels.
Yeah.
And there's this platform of food, and it starts at level 1 and kind of makes its way up. And there's like a huge buffet of like all these delicacies on it. And as it gets higher and higher up the levels, obviously there's, bones left over from chicken wings. There's like the crust of bread. And essentially the people at the higher levels get less food than the others. Mm-hmm. So it's like a social experiment because it's like, well, do I eat as much as I need to survive or do I save it for the rest of the people?
Right. Yeah.
And every 30 days they get shuffled to different levels, and you can see at some points people have cannibalized each other because they put themselves on the platform after they die and they eat the bodies.
Yes, yeah.
Struggling for anything.
Right, they need to eat food.
Yeah, and as the platform gets to the very, very top level, it's just like apple cores that are left. Like nothing is left for anything.
Right.
But yeah, it focuses on all these different prisoners, and it's definitely a unique concept in like social commentary, I'd say. Because it's like, should we ration for others? Should we do like every man for themselves? Do we even, because they don't even know the people on the 130th floor, but then like I said, I think the main character starts out on like 120, then they get shuffled down to like level 30, and I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but it is a good movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It is a good movie, and they become friends with the people that they're in the room with because they have to share the food together, they have to work together. And they become a system at one point where somebody like rides down the platform and like beats the shit out of people that don't leave enough food. And
yeah, they kind of just like cheat the system kind of thing.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either. I've heard good things about it though. Like the whole idea is like very unique about it and everything.
Yeah, it's like the terrors of human nature, I would say. Like how we would be if we were in that situation. We were starving. Most people would just conserve all the food they can, and then I believe if you hide food, you get beaten, like, severely. If you take any more, like, you have to eat everything you can in that sitting. You can't steal anything.
Oh, you can't, like, hold rations? No. Okay.
I believe you get, like, severely beaten if that happens.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Oh, there's 200 levels.
Oh, damn. Okay.
But people, like, it's very sad. People, like, hang themselves, like, as you descend through the levels because they just give up on life. And
right. No, I gotcha.
Somebody killed and ate their dog in one of the levels.
Like, you're allowed a dog?
I know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah. Like I said, I have to rewatch it. I do remember it being very good, though.
Yeah, I want to watch it, too, because I've heard good things. Mm-hmm. Alright, so for my number 4, I picked 1970s West German historical horror film directed by Michael Armstrong, Mark of the Devil. So this movie it's a witch hunting movie. It's kind of like, almost like a, kind of a little bit romantic. But basically it's, there's a witch hunter in this town. It's in 18th century Austria in this small alpine village. And he's a tyrant, everybody's a witch, mm-hmm. So it's that typical, like, hysteria and everything like that.
Mob mentality.
Yeah, he's anybody that's, like, going against him.
Or not religious or whatever is a witch.
Yeah, exactly. That's not, that's committing any type of blasphemy or anything like that.
Not the blasphemy.
Yeah, so, he's like, there's opening scene is kind of like he's burning these 2 girls, and they're, wrongly accused, obviously, and, then it cuts to, this girl, I guess, like, the church sends out, like, a head witch hunter or something like that to make sure it's, like, there's no crazy hysteria going on, like, what this guy's doing, and he's kind of putting a stop to it, but at the same time, he's, like, everybody in the town still fears this witch hunter. And he accuses this one girl that the guy from the church kind of has a thing for, of, like, witchcraft, and so he takes her prisoner and everything like that. And he can't really do anything about it. He's there to kind of, like, regulate, but he can't, like, stop him from doing anything. Gotcha. Because there's obviously certain criteria that it has to meet, and he's just making up the criteria to, like, do that and everything.
It's like an exorcism, the criteria and all that.
Yes, yeah. So it's this girl, she's a barmaid, and this witch hunter, like, wants to, like, marry her and everything like that, but she wants nothing to do with him, so he accuses her of blasphemy and having sex with the devil, obviously, and everything like that. Yeah, just being completely over the top. And so he imprisons her, and at the same time, this other head witch hunter, he's like trying to put a stop to all of this and like shut it down and everything. Like the townspeople now are kind of revolting against this, you know, the head one for their village and everything. And essentially what ends up happening is they kind of angry mob and kill this head witch hunter guy. Gotcha. And, you know, make him pay. Essentially that's the movie. It's good. It's a longer film. I think it's like 100 minutes. It was put on the Video Nasty. Of course. List, and it's really not that bad.
I feel like all these movies are put on the Video Nasty.
Yeah, it's very not bad at all. It's actually, I think, like more of a historical movie than anything. Like, you should definitely watch it.
Yeah, we should do that as an episode, like movies that were put on Video Nasty that shouldn't have been.
Yeah, and it's not, I don't think it's dubbed over. I think actually the people are speaking English in this movie. I can't remember if it's dubbed or not, but you can watch it with English, I'm thinking.
Okay.
So yeah, that is my number 4 pick there. Mark of the Devil.
All right. I know we should say the name after. I was going to do that. So for my number 4, I picked 2005's Wolf Creek, which is another Australian movie, another Aussie.
Oh yeah, Aussie.
And what's cool about this one, similar to other ones I talked about, is it's loosely based on a true story as well. It's about these backpackers in Australia, and it's loosely based on the murders of, true events, about real-life murders of backpackers in the 1990s, which I guess were also killed by a serial killer, which is the same plot as this movie.
Gotcha.
But it's like the typical, I mean, if you've seen one, like, teenage horror movie, you've kind of seen all of them.
Yeah.
Their car gets broken down, they have to, you know, meet up with some creepy guy, and he ends up being a serial killer.
Yeah.
And he's super sadistic, like, super, like, this, I guess, like, Australians do have rednecks, because he reminds me of, like, this fucking redneck.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely a redneck, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, he's like a bushman, he lives out in, like, the middle of nowhere, he, like, lives in, like, a garage, you know, like, sleeps on the floor.
And I think our main character, she wakes up, and she's, like, tied up, and she's smart enough to get out of it, and she finds her friend, who's also tied up, unties her, they kind of have this standoff with the guy, and she steals his truck, and backs away, but one of the most idiotic things ever, she leaves a loaded gun next to him.
Yeah.
And as she drives away, so he shoots her tires out, and it's kind of this whole game of, like, cat and mouse.
It is,
but it's, like, almost the next level of it, because a lot of times in horror movies, when they get on the road and they have a vehicle, it's like, okay, they're safe now.
Yeah, they're driving away.
But not this guy. Like, he's like fucking Jeepers Creepers. Like, he's everywhere pulling up. Like, he knows all these back roads. So as the girls are trying to drive away in his truck, he like chases them off the road, traces them back down. One of the girls gets picked up by a stranger, and he shoots and kills the stranger. Finds them, runs them off the road. Like, just a super sadistic serial killer, and he's just, like, laughing his head off and being crazy and creepy, and...
Oh, yeah.
He's too much.
I know, he's definitely, like, you're...
Like, there's something wrong with him.
It's, like, wrong turn, but Australia.
I would say so, but it's scary, because it's, like, she gets in the car with this really nice guy who was like, I'll take you to the hospital, I'll help you, whatever. So they're driving away, and she thinks she's made it. And she sees in the rearview mirror this guy's truck pulling up, and she's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Right.
And she's like screaming, crying, and he runs them off the road, shoots and kills the nice guy that was gonna bring her.
Yeah.
Takes her back. It's like he doesn't let anybody go.
No.
Like, he has this vendetta for all of them. He comes and he just grabs all of them and brings them back as they try to escape.
Yep.
And it's crazy because it's like 5 against 1. Like, there's 5 of them.
You'd think there would be, exactly. There would be some sort of, like, you know, winning, but no, he just is an animal.
He's a savage.
Yeah, I did like Wolf Creek. I remember the trailer for it coming out. It was, like, based on true events, and, like, everyone was like, oh, man, what?
Yeah.
Because it was, like, weird. They made him in, like, the trailer. I remember, like, the redneck guy, he, like, did this thing where, like, his head twitched, and it was, like, a demon face. So you think it's, like, some supernatural, like, thing, too, and it's based on true events, but it's really not.
It's just humans being sadistic.
Yeah.
Killing each other in the outback.
Yes, exactly. Alright, so for my number 3, I picked 1979's Italian exploitation horror film directed by Joe D'Amato, Beyond the Darkness. So this is actually a remake of the 1966 film, The Third Eye, which was released in Italy, back in 1966. So going on almost 20 years here. basically the movie is about this taxidermist whose parents were killed 9 years before in a car accident. And he's now has this like beautiful like villa that he lives in with his housekeeper. Housekeeper's name. I don't know. I can't remember the housekeeper's name. But and he's got this nice girlfriend. But she ends up dying, and by a voodoo curse that the housekeeper placed on her through a voodoo doll. Like basically killed her with a voodoo doll.
Casual.
So that sets this kid off. His name's Francesco. And he is basically turns just crazy. So he steals her body from the morgue and brings it back to the house and is like keeping it there. He's like preserving it because he's a taxidermist. And the I guess coroner, I guess it would be, he gets involved and is like trying to locate the body and everything. He's like asking him questions. He kind of has a suspicion that he has something to do with it and everything. And he like told her like, her body went missing and everything. And he's kind of like, oh my God, not really like acting like too concerned with it because he actually has the body. So he's kind of suspicious about Francesco. And then the housekeeper's very weird, like, and Francesco's obviously got some, like, issues, too, because he's, first off, preserving his dead girlfriend, but he's also, like, the housekeeper has, like, a sexual thing with Francesco, too, like a mommy-son type of thing. And Francesco's, like, he's, like, a grown man, I mean, he's, Norman like, Bates. 20 years old. Yeah, very Norman Batesy vibes. And as they're, so she's kind of pissed off that he's trying to like preserve Anna's body because she wants to like inherit the house and be married to him, so she gets the house and everything, And so she kind of helps him kill girls because like he's got like Norman Bates problems, It's kind of like an Italian cycle. Like there's this girl, he's out like jogging, and there's this other girl jogging who sprains her foot, and he invites her back to the house, kills her, and they put like her body in the bathtub and put acid in it. This movie is very gory. It's I mean, Joe D'Amato, he makes awesome gore flicks, but, like, this acid, like, starts dissolving the body, and, like, you see, like, her head floating up, and it's all, like, dripping flesh, just very, like, very violent and very gory. And then there's this other girl that he ends up, like, getting back to the house, and he's, like, disemboweling her and everything like that, and, like, using parts for, like, taxidermy and everything. Eventually, he does get caught, and, he's actually, I think at the end of the movie, too, he thinks Anna came back to life. Like, he's very delirious the whole time. So he's, like, not sane. He's killing because he's insane, He has no idea. That's what I was, like, thinking. And then, obviously, his parents dying when he was a young kid, probably, like, scarred him emotionally. But it's kind of sad to watch him, like, spiral. And at the end, like, he thinks Anna's body's, like, back to life, and he's, like, laying in bed with it and, like, kissing it. And but it's, like, cutting from, like, what he's seeing to what's, to reality. And he ends up getting caught and everything like that.
Like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, it's very, like, Psycho-esque. And, Jeffrey Dahmer kind of, just, there's no reality there.
There's nothing up there.
It's really good. I really like it because it's super gory. Like, there's a lot of good violence in it. And it's Joe D'Amato. I mean, he's notorious for, like, he's like, Lucio Fulci. He,
known for violence.
Known for the gore and everything like that. And he also did Absurd and The Grim Reaper, too. And those always are super, super violent movies. I should put The Grim Reaper on here, too. That's a good one.
And I always think of other ones after as we're doing this. I'm like, oh, shit, I forgot about that movie.
Well, we'll do, like, a part 2 or something.
I know. I think if we do this long enough, we'll probably go back and revisit a lot of these topics, because we'll be like, oh, I forgot to do this, or I forgot to mention that,
Right. Yeah, and this, I believe, is dubbed in English, too, so you can watch, like, Italian with subtitles and dubbed in English. But, yeah, definitely a good one. Definitely one of my favorite foreign films, for sure, Beyond the Darkness.
Alright, so my number 3, I picked Parasite, which is a South Korean film, and it came out in, I think, 2019 or 2020? 2019.
2019.
I watched this not dubbed over. I watched subtitles with this, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this movie. I would say it's not so much a scary movie as it is like a thriller and like a suspense. But I still love it. I think it's a great movie. Almost like a dark comedy.
Okay.
But it's all about the Kim family, and there's 4 of them, and they're super poor. They live like underneath this, like, I don't know, they live, like, underneath the streets in South Korea.
Yeah.
And all of them for work, like, fold pizza boxes, and that's all they do is they fold pizza boxes.
It's super weird, yeah.
I don't know if that's a job in South Korea, but they just, like, fold pizza boxes all day.
Yeah.
The son he's smart, I believe he's in college, and he runs into one of his friends, and one of his friends is like, hey, I'm going on his friend's rich, obviously, because he's like, I'm going to travel the world to study.
Mm-hmm.
Will you help this one girl I've been her tour, or her study guide for a little bit, I've been teaching her English.
Yeah.
Can you go with her for a couple months since I'm going to be gone? And he's like, yeah, I'll take a job, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to this house, and you can tell the family is super, super wealthy.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets in, and the daughter really, really likes him, and he starts teaching her English and all that, and then one by one, he kind of, like, brings his whole family in on it.
Yeah.
Because they have a son, and he's really into art, so he lies to the mom, and he's like, oh, I know somebody that's an art therapist, she's very good.
Yes.
But really, it's his sister.
Right.
So he brings his sister on, they need a new housekeeper, they bring their mom on, they need a new driver, they bring their dad on.
Yes.
So his whole family... The Kim family has infiltrated this rich family's life.
Yes.
They don't know that they're all family.
Yeah, they have no idea that
They have no idea. And they're just taking all their money. They're just, like, not abusing them, but, like...
No. They're not really they're not doing anything really wrong.
I don't think so.
You know, if they really weren't. I mean,
Just
besides
lying,
getting,
but...
like, the driver and the maid fired.
Yeah, they did get people fired.
Yeah, because, like, that's how they had to get the mom and dad in, was they had to fire the maid and the driver.
Yeah, they put, like, a pair of underwear in the car.
Yeah, and, like, the maid was, like, doing drugs or something,
they
or
said
sick
that,
or something like that.
It was terrible, because the maid had a peach allergy.
Yeah.
So they put peaches everywhere, so she would start coughing and sneezing, and then they convinced the mom that she had tuberculosis.
Yeah, it was, like, something wild like that, yeah. And she was, like, coughing up blood, and, like, the mom was, like, a germaphobe, like, didn't want anything like that, yeah.
And then it takes, like, a twist, because we find out that the old maid, the old housekeeper, had been keeping her husband in the basement of this house, of the rich people's house, and, like, feeding him and giving him food and clothing and shelter, because it's actually sad, because they were so poor they couldn't afford a house.
Yeah, exactly.
So when she got fired, she came back, and she's like, my husband's still in the basement, essentially.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes balls to the wall at the end. They get into a brawl with the rich family. The dad of the Kim family stabs the dad of the rich family, because he makes a comment about him smelling bad, but I'm like, you...
Yeah, it's that whole, like, the rich are better than the poor. And, like,
Yeah.
he was, like, holding his nose when he was, like, getting the keys out of that one guy.
I would have stabbed him, too.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I hope he dies.
Like, they were so poor that their house literally got flooded with sewage. Like, their whole neighborhood got flooded with sewage.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to go to this house the next day, so they're, like, hoping that they don't smell them when they smell bad, and he was talking bad about how bad he smells.
Yeah, like, literally saying it to him, too.
Yes.
Like, oh, you smell so bad, like...
But I highly recommend this movie. It's like, funny. It is.
It's a very good film.
Definitely a commentary on, like, the caste system and...
Yeah, society in general, you know.
And how sad it
anywhere
is
in
that
the world.
this family, like, this one family of four has to fold pizza boxes while this other family of four is just so rich that they can hire an art therapist.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and have a driver and a maid.
And have a driver
you know.
and a housekeeper and... Yes.
Yeah, it's just insane.
And obviously parts of their house that they didn't even know about because it's so big.
Yeah, they
have
like a secret, like, bomb shelter,
Yeah.
you know, fallout shelter
That they didn't
under
know
the house
about.
they had no idea about, you know.
But no, really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely recommend Parasite.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely loved that movie. I thought it was a long movie too, so you kind of got to, like, you know, deal and sit through it. But it gets really good. You're like, oh man, this is nuts.
And you don't really understand what they're doing at first. You're kind of like, what?
No.
And then as they bring more and more people in, you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
They're just playing the fuck out of them.
Oh yeah.
Taking advantage of the mom just being kind of dumb and
yes, exactly.
have way too much money on her hands.
Right. All right. So for my number 2, I picked 1964's Blood and Black Lace. So this is another Mario Bava film, probably his most famous film that he is known for because it is super good. So this basically started the whole Giallo. I wouldn't say started it, but this was like a huge, like...
Driving factor?
Yeah, driving factor and, like, you know, the later films to come of the Giallo subgenre of horror / crime movies. So this really isn't like a horror movie, you know, under the context of, like, horror. It's more of a crime movie.
Okay.
But it does involve killing. This is that whole argument we had, like, I think on our first episode, like, what makes, like, a slasher film, you know, a slasher film.
Yeah.
And this has all the aspects of having, you know, a slasher film. There's a mass killer that uses different
But it's still considered a
techniques,
crime movie?
but it's still, like, more of a, like, crime movie because there's, like, you're trying to figure out who done it kind of thing. It's like a mystery.
Sounds
Like,
like Clue.
who's the killer, you know?
Yeah.
Who's the killer? So I could talk a lot about this movie, but I'm just going to briefly go through it. So it's centered around this Roman fashion house, and essentially there's like these, it's a fashion, there's like fashion week and stuff there. Like Rome's obviously super famous for its fashion and everything, So there's like these models there, and there's like these, I don't know what they would be called, like fashion makers, like
designers.
Designers. Yeah, designers is the word. And it centers around them, and one by one, they start getting killed in pretty violent ways. This movie was pretty violent. Like the strangling scenes, like it's very violent. And this came out in 1964. And like other ways, there's some drownings, there's some stabbings and everything. I think a couple shootings and everything. But one by one, these models start getting killed. And the whole time you're like, what's going on? The police are involved and everything like that. Come to find out, the modeling agency was also smuggling cocaine in and out of Italy to like distributing it throughout the world. And the whole time you're thinking this is like the making, like the police are saying this is like a male doing all this. It's like making of a sex maniac because these women are like, they're sexualized, they're models, they're, being idolized and everything. So this is some sort of sex maniac and everything like that. Come to find out at the end of the movie, a huge plot twist, it's actually one of the fashion designers, she's doing it because they found out, like one of the girls found out that she was like running this drug ring and everything like that. So she starts killing them off one by one, figuring out who told who and killing them off. Oh my god, the whole time you're just like glued to the TV watching. I love this movie because you're like, who is it? Who is it? Who the hell could it be? And like they're giving so much clues to like it being one person, and then it's not that person. They end up getting killed. That's why I love Giallo movies, because you think it's one person, they end up dying. Goes to another person. You're okay. It's definitely them. No. They end up dying, and this movie has just like the whole.
I love those movies.
Yeah, and it literally was just like, it's so good. And Mario Bava, I mean, he's the godfather, I think, of Giallo movies. It's so good. And I think they do make a dubbed version of it, but watch it in Italian because it's so much better in Italian. And
just subtitles.
Yeah, just subtitles. And it's, oh my god, it's so good. And it's like, Dario Argento, obviously, with the crystal plumage. I mean, this is a huge thing. And also, like, people like Martin Scorsese says it's like one of the greatest films ever made and everything.
That's a big.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, they put references into it in some of their movies and stuff like that. It's just such an iconic film, and it did very well. The budget was, I don't know what it actually didn't do too good in the initial release, but now it's a cult classic, and it's like actually recognized as like one of the most like fundamental pieces of cinema because it's just such a great movie. I can see that. If
it started the whole like whodunit aspect, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a huge stepping stone. All these critics.
That brought us to today's day. That's like Scream and things like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think, like I said, it paved the way. This is like one of the first slasher films too, because it was violent too. I mean, this wasn't like just like the camera cuts away and there's like a knife in the shadow.
And it's got the aspect of like them all being taken out one by one.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like a crime movie at the same time. It's two of my favorite things, like crime movies and horror movie put together. That's why I love Giallo films.
I do love a good crime movie.
Yeah, you should watch this. I think you'd actually really like it if you could read the subtitles. Just deal with reading the subtitles. It's very good.
It's crazy because some movies I don't mind subtitles. I'm like, yeah, I could watch this, and other ones I just lose interest.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't.
Well, I don't know if you'd like this either because it is like an older film. It's from the 60s now. You don't really; those aren't really your favorite. But this is my number 2, Blood and Black Lace. Oh god, what a good movie!
All right, my number 2, I picked Speak No Evil. This is a Danish movie. It came out in 2022. And they're actually remaking it. I think it comes out in a couple months. They're making a U.S. version of it.
An American version.
Which I'm shocked because I didn't realize how poorly it did. The budget was $3.1 million and it only made $600,000.
Oh, really?
It did so poorly that I'm surprised they're making a U.S. one.
I wonder why.
I know.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
I mean, it's a fucked up movie, but like...
Right.
How do you go from doing a remake of something that didn't do so well? But anyways, I enjoy it. It's about a family, and they're on vacation in Tuscany. And they kind of meet this other Dutch couple, and they have kids, and it's creepy because their son like doesn't talk. They say that he has some kind of disorder where his tongue, he was born without a tongue.
Yeah.
But the family just starts doing these weird, like, passive-aggressive behavior, like... They ask to stay the night at their house, and they wake up, and the mom is, like, of the one family is like sleeping naked with the husband.
Yeah.
The one husband starts making out with the other wife, and then like they just gaslight the fuck out of the one family because the family's like, that's not cool, and they're like, oh, what do you mean? This is normal. Like this is all normal.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And just like gaslighting the fuck out of them.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited for the U.S. version because I forgot the actor that plays the dad, but he's pretty good. He's pretty well known. I'm excited for that.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember the endings. I know it just goes balls to the wall, but the whole other family, I don't remember if they take their kids or what they do, but what happens is they like cut their son's tongue out.
Yeah, I think how the ending was is like they were trying to get away from the family, but because the family started
down.
Yeah, the family started being like wicked weird, so they leave, and then like they're forced to call the family back because they're out in the middle of nowhere, stranded. They have nothing's around them.
Yes.
So they have to call them, and then they show up and like just take the kid out of the car. And
they just take their kids, and I think they cut both their tongues out.
Yeah.
And just take the kids, and then the parents are like on the side of the road, and this is like the most disturbing, drawn out scene. The parents, they make them strip down, and they're on the side of the road in like this ditch, and the other couple's just throwing rocks at them.
Yeah.
Just like impaling them with rocks.
Throwing them with, stoning them.
Stoning them, yeah. And that's the end of the movie, and it's the most drawn out scene. It's like 10 minutes of them just naked trying to run away, and they're just getting stoned because they have nowhere to run.
Yeah, they're getting like these, good sized, like, freaking baseball sized stones thrown at them.
And then you kind of think, it makes you think, too, like, why did the other kid have his tongue cut out? Was he stolen from somebody else?
That's what I think it is.
Did something happen to them? Like, I hope the new one kind of dives more into that.
That's what I kind of thought. Like, I think it's like, has something to do with like child trafficking or something like that. Like, cut their tongue out so they can't tell you, like, hey, help me, I'm being, these aren't my parents,
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of The Strangers, because at the end, the one dad says, why are you doing this to me and my family? And the other dad says, because you let me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, because you were home. But they did. Like, they did all this weird shit to start out with, like sleeping naked in the bed and then just gaslighting them to being like, this is normal. Like, you basically let them infiltrate your family and take over.
Exactly.
And you don't even know these people.
I know, it's super, super weird. But I definitely liked it. I'm curious to see how the remake is going to be. I definitely liked this version. I thought it was a good movie. I was like, this is different. This is very different. It's a new kind of horror,
I would think so. Yeah, I just hope they dive into more, like, the issues of it and why,
Yes,
why they had their tongues cut out.
I know, I hope they kind of give a little bit more of, like, why they were doing all that, too.
Yeah.
Alright, so for my number one, I picked 2018's Australian historical psychological thriller horror film directed by Jennifer Kent, who also directed The Babadook.
Okay.
The Nightingale. This movie, I actually just watched this for the first time like 2 weeks ago, so I should be pretty good at explaining it. So it's a historical horror, psychological horror, whatever. It's set in 1825 in Van Diemen's Land. It's now present-day Tasmania.
Okay.
And it follows this girl, what's her name, Sarah? What's her name? Hang on a second. Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. So it follows, she's an Irish convict, Claire Carroll, and she works as a servant for a Colonel Force detachment commanded by Lieutenant Hawkins. So basically, there's a little piece of history here. So I guess when, in the 1820s, when they were kind of like, England had the hold over Australia and like New Zealand and Tasmania and everything, they were colonizing that area, so colonization is that's just a horrific thing in itself. Colonization, obviously, so this movie has a lot to do with the horrible things the English did to not only the Irish, but the indigenous people of Tasmania and Australia and everything like that. It's a very dark movie. But, so that's they sent the Irish to Tasmania, basically, as punishment.
Oh, I remember this movie now.
Yeah, as punishment. So the movie, that's just a little background so we can kind of be on the same page with everything. So this girl, Claire, is a servant, basically. She's a slave to this army force that is in Tasmania colonizing it. And there's this Lieutenant Hawkins, that's just the worst human being on the planet. Yeah. And so late one night, and Claire's got this talent too. She sings. She's very got a beautiful voice and everything. And she's nicknamed the Nightingale because she sings very good, and like Nightingale sang and everything. and she's also a barmaid too. So she's serving drinks and singing and everything like that. And then after work, Claire goes to visit Lieutenant Hawkins to make an inquiry because she is wanting to like go back to Ireland. Like she thinks her time served and her husband's time served and everything like that. And he's like, yeah, right. And he's promised her multiple times that he would let her like, you know, put in the recommendation that she gets to go home. So he's like, absolutely not, no. And then like she's like does a song for him, and it's like I think it kind of moves him emotionally, but then it like pisses him off, and he rapes her right there. And like he because he had tears in his eyes when he was singing, but then I think it just like pissed him off that she asked like to go back to Ireland. That he like ended up, you know, he ended up raping her right there.
That's her.
Yes, and then after that, she, you know, continues on about her chores and everything, her servants and, you know, her services and everything like that. And then her husband knows something is up, and he goes and confronts Hawkins about it, and, you know, is like, I'm going to fight you, you know, and they get into like a fight and everything. And then Hawkins' superior comes into the room and is like, Hawkins, my office now, essentially, like, you know, because he knows Hawkins is a piece of shit, too.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I'm not sending you where you wanted to go, because Hawkins was supposed to leave the next day to go to, like, this other better part of Tasmania that's more, like, I don't know, colonized or whatever.
Yeah,
nicer. And he's like, no, you're not going here, you're going here, and it's, like, a longer travel and everything. He's not allowed to go with, like, the cavalry or whatever, so he has to get there on his own. So he's pissed about that, and he thinks it's all the fault of the husband. So he goes into Claire and the husband's cabin, and this part's really sad. And he, you know, essays Claire in front of the husband, and they have a newborn baby too. And there's two other guys with Hawkins, like the people under him that are like his like jockeys, and they end up killing the baby too, and it's
so fucked up.
Very dark. Yeah, I was like, this is a little much right now. But then the whole movie, I'm just gonna brief. It's a long movie. It's 2.5 hours long. Just briefly go through it. So Claire, you know, if they leave Claire alive, they kill the husband and obviously the baby, and Claire obviously comes to, thinks it's a bad dream, because like the movie then cuts to like Claire's like imagining like or dreaming like that they're still alive and everything's normal, and then it cuts back to reality. She wakes up, and you know she's pissed obviously, and takes her baby, and she's like, where is he? And she's like, you know, he left this morning. And there's like other Irish convicts working there too, and they're like, you know, appalled at what happened, and they're like crying, and I had tears in my eyes. It was super sad. Yeah, super super sad. And then so Claire's pissed. She's like, you know, buries the baby and everything like that, buries her husband, and then goes after Hawkins. And Hawkins is like probably about 6 hours ahead of her, because he had left, you know, early that morning and whatever. And so she acquires the help of this Aborigine tracker, Charlie, and they go basically looking after him. And she tells Charlie that she's looking for her husband, so Charlie has no like suspicion to like think like she's going to do something bad.
Smart girl.
Yeah, and so they end up finding Hawkins, and they go through some turmoil. Like Hawkins ends up killing his guide because he's an Aboriginal tracker, and it just shows the atrocities that the British did back in the, you know, just not even that long ago, just a few hundred years ago. I mean, they completely decimated the Aboriginal people of Tasmania and Australia. Like, there's none of them left to this day. And
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's no, they were horrible people. Yeah. Imperialism was a horrible thing. And yeah, so that's basically the whole gist of the movie, is just the horrors that were committed by the British. And you know, it's a good thing to bring light to, you know, because it is something that you really don't hear too much about, but it was horrible. But anyway, back to the movie. So they end up finding Hawkins, and Claire has the opportunity a few times to kill Hawkins, but doesn't. She gets scared because I think she's psychologically still traumatized by what he did to her. And it's really sad, because you're like, oh man, I hope she gets her, gets him and everything. And Charlie, at the same time, he's witnessing all the horrific things too. Like, his whole tribe is gone. Yeah. They've been, you know, they've been like genocide. So they're both like in this weird, like, like ether of like feeling and everything like that. And then Charlie decides to actually go ahead and kill Hawkins because he knows part of the reason he's part of the reason essentially. So he kills Hawkins. He dresses up in his traditional Aborigine body paint and everything, and walks into the inn that they were staying in and just spears Hawkins right through the chest. And it's like, yes, finally. And then poor Charlie gets shot by one of Hawkins' lackeys. And I don't know how he didn't die because he was shot right in the stomach, but they were able to walk to the beach and watch the sunrise. And Charlie's like dancing and everything like that. And then Claire's like singing and everything. And the movie cuts out. And it's super sad. It's such a great film, though. It's definitely one I think everybody needs to watch because it's something that is not talked about enough. How the English treat people and treated people, yeah. But still, I mean, it's terrible, and it's all whitewashed history too. Yeah. I mean,
which the U.S. has that too.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, we obviously do too, but. Yeah. I mean, it's something I think a movie everybody needs to watch and just see how horrible they treated these poor indigenous people. And then the Irish, too. I mean, the Irish, all the stuff they did to the Irish during the same time, sending them to these places for petty crimes, like, I need a loaf of bread because, you rule my country, but you're not helping me with anything, Yeah. It's terrible. It really is. So that's my number one, The Nightingale. And yeah, definitely go give this a watch. This movie blew me away with how great it was, how good it was.
Well, my number one is not that depressing. It's called When Evil Works, which this is a relatively recent movie. It came out in 2023. It's Argentinian.
Yeah, this is good.
This is a very I think it I guess I'm not super educated on Argentinian culture, but I think it shows all the superstitions and how religious they are there.
Oh yeah.
Because this whole movie is about this individual who's called the Rotten, and he's disgusting looking. He's probably 600 pounds. He's got these boils all over him. Yes. He's yellow, and the idea is that he's bound to give birth to this demon. It's this demon that hasn't been birthed yet or taken physical form.
Yes.
So they have what's called a cleanser go over there and kill the Rotten in a specific way, because this is what I mean with their superstitious, is you're not supposed to kill them with a gun because I guess then it can jump from person to person.
Yes.
And there's certain ways of handling the Rotten, whatever.
Yeah, you can't touch it and stuff like that. Yeah. There's very specific.
It's very superstitious and very specific. Well, the cleaner doesn't handle it properly, and he dies. So these two brothers get called because they hear the gunshot. And I don't know if he tried to shoot the Rotten or what, but the cleaner ended up getting killed. Mm-hmm. So the sheriff calls these two brothers, and they're like, "Hey, I need your help. We have a Rotten." Yeah. And they try to handle him as best as they can, but it's such a gross scene. They wrap him up in this sheet, and he's just this huge, lard person. Yeah. Bloated and just disgusting.
Yeah, it was very gross.
Very gross. This person. And they carry him outside of town limits, and then try to drop him off there because they think that's kind of what they're supposed to do. Yeah. But essentially, they didn't carry out the practice as they should.
Yeah, well, I think they didn't make it outside of town, and he somehow got out of the truck somehow. And, crawled
somehow
his
spirit got out, and he didn't die outside of town, so he was still in the town. Yes. So it kind of jumps to, because it can go with animals too. Yeah. It jumps to a goat, and then the goat kind of looks at this the farmer, and it jumps to the farmer. The farmer turns around, kills his wife. Yes. And then it just kind of spreads from there. It's just complete mayhem.
Yes.
And there's some really crazy out of pocket scenes in this movie.
Oh my god, yeah.
It jumps to a dog at one point, and the dog chews this little girl's face off.
Oh my god, yeah. It's something bad's gonna happen too, because the guy goes.
Filmed.
Yeah, and it keeps cutting back, and it's this big Cane Corso dog too, and it's
looks like Cujo.
Yeah, this little girl and her brother sitting there playing, and the dog's kind of behind them.
And he's just
yeah, and you hear the dog breathing. It's kind of from the dog's point of view, and then oh my god, all of a sudden it's just something bad's gonna happen. But you don't think it's gonna be that. The dog just grabs this little girl like a rag doll and just is
it's something I did not. My jaw was on the floor.
Yeah, I was that is wild.
There's some really crazy scenes. I definitely recommend this movie. But it's basically these two brothers, and then they go to the schoolhouse to try to find out where the Rotten originated from and try to stop it from its origins and go from there. But there's so many different plausibilities and like circumstances. Like I said, they're very superstitious.
Yeah,
so
it's got to be done in a certain way. It can't
Yes.
just be like, and it can't be done by just anybody. Like it has to be a certified like, and like they run
Cleanser.
into that girl that was like ran like a sect of cleansers.
Yes.
Like she was like the overseer of these cleansers and everything. And
yeah, very. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's actually a part of their culture or not, but it's super interesting. And
yes,
it's
very,
a very,
cool
very good movie.
Yeah, I
Very
really
cool
liked
movie.
it. I was like, this is way different than your typical like exorcism
Super
movie.
different. When it started out with that guy, I was like, oh god.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this?
What is that thing? Like, is he a monster? Is he? What is this deal?
I know.
But
Yeah, that was a great movie. I really did like that.
go check out some of the movies we talked about. We'll be back next week. But until then,
Stay spooky, guys.
stay spooky.